So, so the Buddha says the demons love the ocean. Love here, piya, I think. Is it piya? I haven't looked it up, piya. So piya is like love or to be dear to. Yeah, the ocean is dear to the asuras because they are said, they're said to live in the ocean. They live under the ocean or in the ocean somehow. Exactly how that works, I'm not sure. Remember that these are beings in a different realm, so the ocean looks different to them because they are in a different realm. So the devas are right here on the earth or in this realm, but the earth looks different to them because they have a different material body, but it's still part of the same realm, so to speak. So yes, the ocean is dear to the asuras. And then the Buddha asks, but seeing what incredible and amazing things do the asuras love the ocean? Why is it that you guys love the ocean? That's what it is saying. And then the Pahārādasutta says, Sir, seeing 8 incredible and amazing things, the asuras love the ocean. What 8? And so here they come. The first one, the ocean gradually slopes and inclines with no abrupt precipice. This is the first thing that the demons love about the ocean. So the ocean slants and slopes gradually with no abrupt precipice. I'm not sure why that is such an amazing thing, but maybe to the people in the old days, 2,500 years ago, maybe you thought you reached the end of the earth and then kind of it just dropped off or something like that, or the ocean was very unfathomable for them because it was so vast you couldn't see the other end, so maybe you thought, wow, this just kind of goes on forever or something like that. But I think for us it is not so strange because we are used to the ocean, so we understand how it works. And so for us, the ocean is obviously just a continuation of the land, and the land usually goes gradually. So if the dry land goes gradually, well, you expect the ocean to do the same because it's just a continuation of the land, the dry land, really. But for them, this was amazing that it kind of goes slowly, gradually sloping off, which is, Anyway, so that one is a little bit not entirely sure why they thought that was amazing and incredible, but that's what they did. So this is the first thing the asuras love about the ocean. Furthermore, the ocean is consistent and doesn't overflow its boundaries. This is the second thing the asuras love about the ocean. In other words, the ocean is steady. It doesn't go beyond the shore. It doesn't go kind of suddenly, it doesn't go into KL suddenly and then it goes back again. It stays. Fortunately, it stays in one place. It doesn't go too far. But, you can see why for them that would be strange, because if you look at lakes around the world, the lakes may swell, they may go down. In the dry season they go down, then in the rainy season they swell again, and all of these things. But the ocean is always steady. It doesn't go beyond the boundary. The boundary is always there, and it stays within that boundary. You can imagine that would have been strange for them. Why does this happen? Why is it so steady? It's like some kind of magic. The ocean has some special magic to it, which nothing else has to it. Furthermore, the ocean doesn't accommodate any kind of corpse, but quickly carries it to the shore and strands it on the beach. This is the third thing the demons love about the ocean. So if there's anything floating in the ocean, it tends to be drawn to the shore. And I suppose this is a nice thing because corpses, you want to get rid of them. It's like there's some kind of magic in the ocean that get rid of all the bad things. The corpses or the dead whatever it might be, and it kind of gets kind of gets thrown out of the ocean and onto the beach, onto the dry land instead. Doesn't accommodate bad things. Gets rid of the junk, the rubbish, the rotting stuff, the dead corpses, or whatever that might be. Furthermore, when they reach the ocean, all the great rivers, that is the Ganges, the Yamuna, the Achiravati, the Sarabu, the Mahi, lose their names and clans and are simply considered as the ocean. This is the fourth thing that the Asuras love about the ocean. So this is this idea that the ocean is kind of greater than all the individual waters. The ocean encompasses everything. Everything, all the waters in the world are kind of collected together ultimately in the ocean. Now this is a very interesting simile, and the reason why this is interesting is because this is also found in the Vedas. The Vedas, as you may know, are the existing literature prior to Buddhism, part of the Brahmanical society. The Vedic religion is like the precursor to the modern-day Hinduism. It's different from Hinduism because it was much simpler. It didn't have all the thing that we have now. The caste system was much simplified. The gods weren't so multiplied yet. It wasn't quite as colorful as the modern-day Hinduism, probably. But it has many things in common. So this is kind of from those Vedas. And in those Vedas, they use this simile of all the rivers in the world coming together in the ocean, and they lose their names, and they lose those names that they had before and become simply called the ocean as a consequence. And the simile is for what happens when people die. In this world, we each have our name. This is me, this is you, this is my name, this is your name. This is what you look like, this is what we all look like. We have appearances and we have names. And then when we die, we all go to the great ocean. And the great ocean is like the Brahman, the Vedic idea of the universal consciousness. And so this simile was very powerful because it was used for this idea of universal consciousness, how everyone, when they die, they kind of go back to the ground of all being, the consciousness, the large mind, the Brahman mind of the world. So very powerful, and that's also why it's so interesting that when the Buddha comes, and we will see this later on in the section when the Buddha replies to Pahārāda, he turns this into a Buddhist simile instead. The idea of everyone losing their name, it now gets a Buddhist meaning. And that Buddhist meaning is going to be different from the Vedic meaning. That's the whole point. Remember, the Buddha was someone who criticized the Vedas. He said you had misunderstood the nature of reality. So he had to give these ancient ideas a new meaning. And by doing that, he would kind of turn people's attention in a new way. He would in one fell swoop, in one go, he would show the problem with the old understanding and also show the new understanding by using the same similes, but using them in a new way. The same thing with vocabulary. He would take the old vocabulary and use it in the same way, use it in a new way. Take the old similes, use them in a new way, etc., etc. So we'll see this in a second, how the Buddha does that. So these are the great rivers of the world, all losing their name and clan, their name and form, if you like. Furthermore, for all the world's streams that reach it and the rain that falls from the sky, the ocean never empties or fills up. This is the fifth thing that the demons love about the ocean. And this is similar to what we saw before about the ocean never overflowing. Right? It doesn't matter how many rivers empty into the ocean. It doesn't matter how much it rains. It doesn't make any difference. The ocean is still the same. You can imagine that may have looked like a miracle to people 2,500 years ago. How is it possible when the Ganges River, those of you who have seen the Ganges River, you know how enormous it is. A lot of water going into the ocean. The Ganges River is like, we crossed the Ganges River when we were in India recently at Patna, and the bridge is about 5 kilometers long. 5 kilometers long bridge. It's enormous, this river. We were there in the dry season. The water was quite low, but you can imagine in the wet season when that is all filled with water, 5 kilometers wide, it's absolutely enormous. All that water goes into the ocean. Not only that river, but all the great rivers of the world. The great rivers of Asia, Yangtze River, Yellow River, Mekong River. What are they called, all these rivers? and they're empty, but actually the ocean is the same. For us, it is obvious because we understand how the cycle of water goes. Yeah, so it rains and it goes into the rivers and it evaporates from the ocean and it kind of goes in a circle. But for people 2,500 years ago, it must have looked like a miracle. How come the ocean doesn't go up? The ocean is like, no wonder they would worship the ocean in a sense. Then comes the main reason why I chose this sutta. I'm taking the opportunity to talk about all of these things, but this is basically the main reason. Furthermore, the ocean has just one taste, the taste of salt. This is the sixth thing that the demons love about the ocean. Wherever you go in the world, the taste is the same. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are, the ocean gets somehow mixed up almost perfectly. The taste is everywhere, the taste of salt in the ocean. So that's kind of also remarkable. Furthermore, the ocean is full of many kinds of treasures, just as pearls, gems, beryl, conch, quartz, coral, silver, gold, rubies, and emeralds. This is the seventh thing the demons love about the ocean. So all kinds of treasures in the ocean. And these days they want to explore the floor of the ocean and pull out all the treasures. So this is what the Asuras could have told us that 2,500 years ago, that it was full of these things. Last one, furthermore, many great beings live in the ocean, such as the Leviathans, the Leviathan gulpers, the Leviathan gulpers. Demons, dragons, fairies. In the ocean there are life forms 100 leagues long, even 200, 300, 400 or 500 leagues long. This is the eighth thing the demons or the Asuras love about the ocean. So these are some of these enormous kind of mythological creatures at that time. And they are, the Pali is a little bit like this. There's the Leviathans. I can't remember now what the Pali word is. Timi. And then the next one is Timingala. Okay, Timingala. Yeah, so Gala is actually means to swallow. Galati. And so it means the timi, the swallowers of the timis. Yeah. So the first one is a timi. That's already an enormous kind of fish, 100 leagues long. 1 league is like 20 kilometers, so 100 leagues is like, 2,000 kilometers, something like that. So these are kind of really big ones. And then the 2,000 kilometers gets swallowed by the other one. Yeah. So that's kind of a small one, 2,000 kilometers. And then the one which is even larger swallows that one again. So you can imagine that these are really, really enormous beings. So how is that possible? We don't seem to see these beings in the ocean. And again, that could be because they are kind of belong maybe to a slightly different realm. So you don't see them for that reason. Maybe they belong to the 4 great kings realm or something like that. And so not directly accessible to us. Anyway, great mysterious being. And the ocean is a bit scary. I don't know about you, but the kind of there's sharks in the ocean, there are killer whales in the ocean, there are whales, and it's kind of really deep. It goes down 1,000 meters. And if you swim out in that ocean, you feel a bit helpless, because it's just, what are you going to do? And so the ocean has this kind of slightly scary feeling to it. And then you have all of these beings in there at the same time. So, seeing these 8 incredible and amazing qualities, things the demons love the ocean. So now that is the background. So now let's see what the Buddha has to say. So then Pahārāda says, well, sir, do the mendicants love this teaching and training? Teaching and training is the Dhamma Vinaya. Mendicants are bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. But in this case, it's just bhikkhus, but bhikkhunis are kind of understood. They do indeed Pahārāda. But seeing how many incredible and amazing things do the mendicants love this Dhamma and Vinaya, this teaching and training. So now we're going to see why the Dhamma Vinaya is so powerful. I just want to point out, for those of you who haven't been on my retreats before, that the translation here of Vinaya as training is very interesting. Because very often when we think about the Vinaya, we think about a set of scriptures called the Vinaya Pitaka, which is like the rules of monastics and the regulations that we follow as monastics. But in the early suttas, the Vinaya Pitaka didn't exist yet. This became a later thing. In the early suttas, there was the Patimokkha, there were the Sikkhapadas, but there was no Vinaya Pitaka as such. And so in the suttas, the main meaning of Vinaya is the practical side of the Dhamma. So the Dhamma is the theory, the practical side is the training that arises from that theory. And so Dhamma Vinaya is like theory and practice, or teaching and training, as you have it here, the practical side of Dhamma. And that's a very interesting kind of idea right there. And then later on, when you got the word Vinaya Pitaka, well, and then the Vinaya Pitaka became known as the Vinaya. And suddenly, when you have the Vinaya Pitaka, then you read the suttas the second, maybe that's what it means in the suttas. No, it doesn't mean that in the suttas, because that's a later understanding of the word. It's very easy to take the later understanding and then think that's what's meant in the suttas, and forgetting about the evolution, the change of words, how words evolve and change over time. This is a very important point, because you need to take that into account when you're going to translate the suttas to understand what is really going on, this evolution of words. I'm not sure if that makes any sense to anyone. So if it doesn't make any sense, then please feel free to ask afterwards as we carry on. So what are these 8 things that the mendicants, that the monastics see in the Dhamma and training? Seeing 8 incredible and amazing things, Pahārāda, the mendicants love the teaching and the training. What 8? So we've already seen that the ocean slopes gradually. In the same way, in this teaching and training, the penetration to awakening comes from gradual training, gradual progress, gradual practice, not abruptly. This is the first thing the mendicants love about this teaching and training. So this is like a very, I think, interesting point, the idea that it is from gradual practice. It has some very profound implications for how we think about the Dhamma and what we are doing as human beings. We should feel the progress in our life. This is one of the consequences of this. And you should feel that something is happening in your mind, that over time you are, moving in a certain direction. You're becoming more kind. You're having less defilements in your mind. You feel more peaceful. You feel more joy in your meditation or in just the way you live your life. You should feel that you are going somewhere, ideally. That's kind of what this is about. This is what gradual training means. You're moving slowly towards a goal. Sometimes people think, I'm just going to do all of these good things, and then when I die, I will get all the good results. But actually, that's a dangerous way of thinking. You should find the results right here in this life. That's how you actually know that you are doing the right thing. Because if you do all of these things and you think, I will get the results after I die, well, maybe you're not doing the right thing if you don't feel positive about it right now. Maybe then you need to readjust. Maybe you need to think about it in a new way. This is very useful, because it is a way for you to gauge whether you are doing the right thing, whether it actually is working for you. I'm keeping the 5 precepts, so I must be doing something good, but sometimes that may not be enough, or maybe you're not having the right attitude or something like that. This path is quite tricky, and sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking we are doing the right thing when maybe we are not. The mind is very, very tricky, and can really lead you astray unless you are very careful with how you do this. So there is a gradual change, a gradual movement, and this is what we should look for in our life as well. So one of the other things that is interesting here, very often we have in Buddhism, we have the discussion between what is called the gradual and what is the other word? Gradual and sudden awakening. Yeah, is it gradual or is it sudden? And this is one of the discussions I think you find in the Kattavatu. Kattavatu is one of the books of the Abhidhamma where they talk about the various discussions that the ancient schools of Buddhism had. And one of those discussions was whether awakening is gradual or sudden. Well, this sutta says it's gradual, right? So is that the end of the story? Well, not quite. Yeah, not quite. Because the point here is that, yes, it's gradual, until you kind of reach a critical mass, a critical point. And that critical point is like the deep samadhi, the jhanas and that sort of thing. And when you reach that critical point, there comes a time when you have a sudden insight, because insights are sudden. It's like a light bulb going on, ding, yeah, and then you see. You all know what I mean, right? Because sometimes you have a feeling of insight. Now I understand what is going on. And when you have that insight, it can be at university. Oh, now I understand what the kind of lecturer is trying to say. Or it can be an insight into your own character. Oh, now I understand this character trait. It can be like that. So insights, of course, they are sudden. And kind of you feel bright and you feel, wow, you feel inspired when that happens. And so that is exactly what the awakening experiences are like. When you become a stream mentor or an arahant or one of these four, it's like a big light bulb moment. Ding! Yeah. It's like they talk about in the sutta as like a flash of lightning in the dark. That's what stream mentory is like. Bang, it flashes up, and then you see what is actually going on. You have an insight into the Four Noble Truths, and that is sudden. So there is this mixture of ideas here. There is gradual and there is sudden, and they work together. It is gradual, with kind of small suddenness in between, yeah, leading up, and then the big sudden at the end, and then you reach awakening. And this is the idea here. And this has consequences, as I mentioned, for how we practice. It means that we should feel, we should see that there is a movement forward on the path, so we can gauge whether we are doing the right thing or not. All right. Then we have the idea that the ocean is consistent, it doesn't overflow its boundaries. In the same way, when a training rule, a sikkhapada, is laid down for my disciples, they wouldn't break it even for the sake of their own life. This is the second thing that the mendicants love about this teaching and training. Wow. Is that true? Is that kind of how monastics live their life? They wouldn't break anything even for their own life? I think it. What do you say, Venerable Punsiri? Is that? Yeah, I have to answer this one. So I always get why do I get the difficult questions? No, no, that's fair. I think you're fair enough. I have chosen this sutta, so I have to answer these things. So I think the point here is that when we look at the sikkhapadas, one of the things that you have to do, I would say that there are certain training rules that you might break, for the sake of your life. So you have to know which training rules are really core and which ones are not so core. So I would think that what is meant by this is the training rules that are fundamental to the monastic life. The Buddha makes a distinction between garukapati and lahukapati. And garukapati means like a heavy or important offense, whereas lahukapati means a light offense. And the heavy offenses, they are the ones you wouldn't break even for life. The other ones, I would say that if you are in a life-threatening situation, you probably would break it. Because what's the point? One of the rules that we have as monastics, for example, is you can't cut plants, you can't destroy vegetation. But if you are in a life-threatening situation and you have to destroy a plant, you might do it for the sake of your life. What's the point of dying so you can't destroy a plant? It's not even bad karma. It's kind of one of those rules that are more conventional rules given by society. And so I would say that depends on the circumstance. Oh, it's getting colder. Please use the hoods. That's perfectly okay if you're feeling cold. Because I sit almost directly under. It's really nice, actually. It's a perfect location for me. I can feel the cold air coming down. So thank you so much for this excellent location. intention. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, very often it is not an offense. If there's no intention, there's no offense anyway. But sometimes, occasionally, you may even intentionally break a rule if it is, if it is for a very important reason. This doesn't mean you don't take the rule seriously. It just means that sometimes, occasionally, it might be required. If you have a very severe illness, you might eat at the wrong time or something like that, depending on the situation. And so it is not entirely black and white. That's how I understand this, because I don't know if I would be able to kind of give up my life simply to save a blade of grass or something like that. That sounds a bit over the top. But what it does mean, however, is to take these rules very, very seriously. That's obviously what it means, and that we should do our very best to keep them. It's of course the same thing with the 5 precepts, or the 8 precepts, or whatever you keep. That these things are very important things because they do purify you, and especially those rules that are about morality. They are very, very fundamental because when they are about morality, then actually, if you break your morality, you do something which goes against your conscience, then you are taking a step backwards on the spiritual path. Do you have time to take a step backwards? Not really. This darkens your mind. It kind of lets yourself down if you do that. We don't have time to take a step backwards. So those things have to do with morality, with purifying yourself, with kind of making the mind bright and ready for samadhi. In those cases, definitely we should avoid doing anything dodgy. But if it is more like a conventional rule, then it's a little bit different. The ocean doesn't accommodate the corpse. In the same way, the Sangha doesn't accommodate a person who is unethical, of bad qualities, filthy, with suspicious behavior, underhand, no true ascetic or spiritual practitioner, though claiming to be one, rotten inside, corrupt, depraved. But they quickly gather and expel them. Even if such a person is sitting in the middle of the Sangha, they are far from the Sangha, and the Sangha is far from them. This is the third thing that the mendicants love about this teaching and training. So the idea here is that if someone like that is in your community, you don't really want them to be there because they have a very corrupting effect on the community, and so you tend to kind of ask them to leave and even throw them out if necessary. But very often that isn't required. Very often you don't have to ask anyone to leave, because as human beings we tend to hang out with people who are like us, and so corrupt people tend to hang out with corrupt people. Good people tend to hang out with good people. Wise people hang out with wise people. And so this is kind of how the world tends to operate. And so for most of the time we don't have to do that. All the bad people, they kind of hang out with together. It's in the suttas you have in the Dhatu Samyutta. The dhatus are like the properties or the elements or whatever. And in that sutta, kind of the Buddha points out, like when the Sariputta, all the monks hanging out with Venerable, they're all wise, All the monks hanging out with Mahamoggallana, they like psychic powers. All the monks hanging out with Anuruddha, Venerable, they kind of have the divine eye, All the monks hanging out with Devadatta, they are dodgy, corrupt, they are not to be trusted. So it's a bit like that, and I think that's kind of how we tend to assemble in the world. So a lot of the time we don't actually have to worry about those corrupt people. People assemble in this way. So if I sound like Ajahn Brahm, it's because I'm Ajahn Brahm disciple. I hang out with Ajahn Brahm. Sometimes you will hear. I don't try to sound like Ajahn Brahm because you have to be your own person. But sometimes you will probably recognizing, oh yeah, you must be Ajahn Brahm disciple. You say exactly what Ajahn Brahm says, and it has to be like that. Anyway. Let's. I will try to follow the timing here. So let's have another short break at this point. 5-minute breaks, and then we will carry on in 5 minutes.
Bhante.
Yeah.
During the Buddha's time, I'm sure the oceans, the rivers, the earth was relatively very clean. But nowadays, you see the oceans all full of garbage and, you know, all the human feces flowing into the river, into the ocean. So how can we say that the ocean is still very clean as compared to universal consciousness?
True. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, actually, it occurred to me as well when I was thinking about this that you've had the famous patch of plastic garbage in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, kind of, these kind of things. So it's true. So So I guess I don't know what the answer to that is actually. Not sure. I guess there is a sense, because it tends to be much more dirty on the beach than it is in the ocean if you look at the beach. So there does tend to be a sense in which it brings things up to the beach. But maybe there are certain areas in the ocean when they are caught because of the way the ocean swirls or whatever. So it is true, we are very good at polluting things. Human beings we are dirty. We do all kind of stuff. So I guess there is limitations to every simile. Every simile has a certain limitation to it. So there's probably some truth, but it only goes so far.
So to aspire to be reborn as a human being again on earth is actually doomed for us, I mean, how are we going to practice with this kind of environment, especially mentality? We are all garbage in our head, actually.
I don't know if it is a doom, because it depends on how you relate to things, I think it's how we relate to things that is the most important thing here. And true, there is a lot of garbage in the world, but there's also a lot of beauty in the world. And one of the wonderful things about being a monk is that you meet a lot of really good people. I only meet good people in my life. That's all I ever meet. People underestimate. I always say this is one of the reasons to become a monk, actually, or a nun, is that you meet so many nice people. Almost everyone I meet is generous and kind and supportive, And so it depends. It depends on how we use the world, how we make use of it. One of the kind of things people these days, they get very depressed about all the wars that are going on, all the garbage and all the environmental degradation and the climate change and the refugees and all the kind of one thing after the other, all the political instability and whatever we have. But actually that can be turned on its head. And it can be, well, if that is the nature of the world, I better get on with my practice. So that understanding of the world, that actually it is problematic, can spur you on the spiritual path, because you see how dangerous the world is. Instead of seeking refuge in that world, which is so dangerous, you seek refuge on the spiritual path. If you go to Devaloka, wow, so nice, just relax. What's the point of practice in the spiritual life? And this is the idea of the human life. It actually gives you a reason to do this, because it's more obvious. We have short lives. We're going to die soon. You are no longer the super young. Sorry, I don't mean to be mean, but it's true, right? You're no longer in your 20s. Let's put it that way. And so what that means is that you can start to see things are coming to an end. I can see the same thing. I look at myself in the mirror. I say, "Wow, end is coming soon." That's what I see here. And that is a spur to practice if we use it in the right way. So all of these things, instead of getting depressed about them, you use it in a positive way to enable your practice. That is the right way. And so sometimes coming back to garbage is a good thing. That's what I'm saying. So please.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning.
I have two questions. First question is, when you were teaching about how enlightenment comes from gradual training progress, and you said that we should feel that we are on the right track when we are feeling when we feel there's this gradual change and movement. What I wanted to ask is, I have tried in the past to sort of be on this gradual path of spiritual learning, but recently I reflected that perhaps I don't know how it happened. I sort of felt like I was taking one step forward, but 3 steps backwards. I was wondering, how can I try to be on the right side of things, and move forward so that I can receive insights that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's my first question. Second question
Can
is
I
with...
take that one first?
Oh,
Because otherwise I might
okay.
forget the question while you're... So, but that is already an insight, yeah? The fact that you know that you are taking one step forward and maybe going back, it's already an understanding. That means you're already looking in the right place. You're already asking the right questions. So that means that you are making progress. Yeah, in a way you're making progress because you've understood something. Yeah. And I don't know exactly what you mean by that. 1 step forward and 2 steps, 3 steps back, or whatever. Not sure exactly what you mean. You look just as happy this year as you looked last time I saw you. I remember meeting you before, so I think you're probably all right. But you have to ask yourself, why? What can you do better? You know, what can I change to make sure I take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 2 steps forward and no step back, or 3 steps forward and whatever. You want to maximize the progress forward. And very often it is just, there are some very obvious things. I don't know what it is in our life, but for example, these days people use too much social media, for example. That makes you go backward very quickly. There are studies these days that show you become more stupid if you use social media. It literally makes you less intelligent. Yeah. So the next generation, they are doomed. They're just going to go really down the drain. So that's one thing that we can do. And to get off social media, sometimes you have to take some very drastic actions because it's very hard. If you walk around with your mobile phone all the time, you're going to check social media whether you want to or not because the addiction is so high. So you have to get a dumb phone. That's one of the things you have to do, yeah? So you have a smartphone maybe, but you leave that in the safe or far away, you can't get access to it. And for maybe your daily activities, you use a dumb phone, or you use a smartphone with certain functions turned off. Or you make the screen look really, apparently there's things you can do so that the screen just goes black and white, or the colors are off, or something like that, so it is not so interesting anymore. But you have to do things that make it difficult to enjoy the smartphone. Because as long as it is easy accessible, you're going to use it. So you have to ask yourself some very simple things like that. And then when you use the social media and the smartphone less, suddenly you sleep better. Suddenly you have better relations with people around you because you become more patient. It makes you very impatient if you're always looking for the next kind of hit through the smartphone. And so some very, very simple things can make big changes to life. I obviously have a laptop, but I don't have a phone at all. And for me, that's actually, I'm very happy I don't have a phone, to be honest with you. And because it's just such a hassle. So something like that, and then you have to look at another thing that people often go wrong. I think some people are too addicted to seeing the news or reading the news, and the news can make you very upset because there are so many things in the world that are very negative. The political instability, the leaders who do all kind of weird things. You wonder, what are these leaders doing? They should be doing something good. Yeah, and then you get upset because of the leaders doing bad things. Of course, getting upset is the wrong response. So ideally, we should have compassion or whatever. But if there's too much news, then it overwhelms our ability to have compassion and kindness, and then we are unable to progress because of that. So read a little bit of news to have some idea what's happening in the world, so you can develop some good qualities of compassion and kindness, but not so much that you get overwhelmed. Simple things like that. Learning just in general, in daily life, how keeping the 5 precepts can be quite difficult in life. But so how can we make that easier? Well, one of the ways is more right view. So you learn to have compassion for people. It's very easy to get angry with other people or upset with them, but actually they don't know what they're doing. People are blind. People have no idea. Why am I getting upset with blind people? They are crazy. Am I getting upset with crazy people? This is just not this is a simile that is used in the suttas sometimes, that if you are angry and you treat other people badly, you are your own enemy. It's like being crazy to be your own enemy. So if anyone does something bad, have compassion for them. It's such a simple idea, but incredibly powerful. And when you develop these underlying qualities, this different way of looking at the world, that right view will aid you in keeping the 5 precepts and being kind and being compassionate and caring. But the right view is the critical thing. Perceiving people in the right way is so important. I talk about this all the time, about how to avoid being angry and how to have more compassion and kindness in the world, because it's so important. But it is not something we can force ourselves to some extent, but the most important thing is to change your view of other people. Look at them in a new way. That is what enables these things to happen almost automatically. That is the most powerful thing. Yeah? So all of these things are ways of thinking. So look at yourself carefully. Where am I going wrong? What can I improve? Why am I going 2 steps backward? And if you are honest with yourself, you will find the way forward, guaranteed. Because it's always, the Buddha said, if you do this in the right way, you will make progress.